You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Denkman. At the start of every week, I sit down with another journalist to talk about the biggest news developing right now and how it affects the Pacific Northwest. And joining me once again today, she's been dancing a little in the studio. I think she's got her coffee going. Her energy is high. It's journalist and playwright Angela Poe Russell. Thank you so much for being back.
Thank you for having me, Libby. And hey, next, you're welcome to join me in the dancing anytime.
I will. I used to do jumping jacks to get the energy up ahead of time, and I want to bring it back. You know, it's good to get your... Also, we sit so much, right? It's good to get your blood flowing.
We do, yes.
Let's get our blood flowing with our first story on Front Page, and it takes us to North Seattle.
People around Aurora Avenue have been asking for help, and now something is happening.
I think it's great.
The city installed these concrete barriers on side streets Friday.
Okay, so there has been this recent uptick in shootings along Aurora Avenue North and North Seattle. Police say this is related to sex trafficking, a longtime problem along that corridor. The violence has driven some neighbors to take things into their own hands with makeshift barricades on a few residential streets. So just to kind of orient people, think the area west of Aurora on North 102nd Street across from the Oak Tree Cinema Shopping Plaza, North 97th and North 98th Streets as well. So the city said, okay, you can't have these barricades in place, and it recently has come through and replaced these with these staggered barricades that are more like traffic calming measures, so that when you drive through, you have to kind of snake through the barriers. But this conversation has just exploded in the last week or so, and it really centers on why Seattle and King County have allowed the situation on North Aurora to get so bad and how our approach to the sex trade has failed so badly. Some critics say we let misguided compassion translate to lax laws that pimps have taken advantage of. Others say this is an ongoing issue. It needs more systemic changes. Maybe there's some of column A, some of column B. Angela, I see you nodding. What is your reaction? There's just so many directions you could take this story. I mean, it's like a story of neighbors taking things into their own hands and actually getting some change at City Hall. It's also a story of just a lot of failures, right, in our public sector. What do you want to, start with?
Oh, that's a really great point. I love the way you set it up, because where do you begin?
Yeah.
I have to say, I love the way Claudia Rowe in the Seattle Times, she had this article like, why can't we solve this? And I have to wonder, for me, it seems like whenever you are in a leadership position, let's say you've been elected, to a particular role, there often aren't any easy answers to issues like this. You are literally between a rock and a hard place. And the bottom line, it appears that Seattle is unwilling to make the hard choice. And so they lean on the side of this compassion without addressing the issue. So, for example, I know you moderated a debate. We have a new city attorney in Erica Evans, and you moderated the debate. And so we had these soda zones that she's saying, okay, we're not going to enforce these, and talked about it being racist policies. Okay, well, if we look at the data, when you look at the number of victims who are African American in terms of sex trafficking victims, 40%.
Wow.
Right? At least 40%. These are like numbers that come from King County.
Mostly women and girls.
Yeah, mostly women and girls. So on one hand, you're saying, okay, they're racist policies, but then that isn't working. So then what's the alternative? Because right now, this is what's happening right now.
Yeah. Black women are being disproportionately victimized by the sex trafficking industry that is happening. And it's been, again, this issue has been going on a long time in Aurora. You and I both know we've been living
for years.
Yeah, in the city for a long time. So, with all fairness to Erica Evans, it was an issue before she took office.
Absolutely. Yes.
And she's been in office for 6 months now. So the soap soda laws, they were in place in 2020. They were part of that wave of criminal justice reform efforts. The city council repealed them. And then in 2024, Kathy Moore championed bringing especially the soap ordinance back, and soap and soda came back to the city. There also is a misdemeanor prostitution loitering charge that came back at the same time. I mean, so the idea is you can have a judge order people who are accused of these crimes to stay out of the area, so to stay out of the soap zone. And the purpose of that, I think, is to kind of interrupt these markets, right? To have the pimps specifically be the ones who are ordered out. And then if cops find them in that area, they could theoretically be prosecuted for violating the soap order.
Absolutely.
Now, the question is, are these ever actually used, and are they useful? Because they had come back and they were around for at least a year under Ann Davison, and she hadn't actually prosecuted any of the violations, of the soap order. So they hadn't been, they'd been issued, the orders had been issued, but they hadn't been utilized yet.
And that's a great point.
Yeah.
So we had the policy there, but not actually the follow through.
Yeah.
So then I think there are some residents wondering, okay, well, can we get the policy and the follow through? And if this isn't the right policy, then what is?
Yeah.
And, one thing that this article grappled with, and I think a lot of advocates in the space are grappling with, is the state legislature, as you know, made it illegal for police to arrest teenagers who were selling themselves for sex, or being sold for
trafficked.
Who are sex trafficked. I think that is the right, because they can't be. They're minors, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's an important distinction. And there was a young woman featured in the article who said that there were some days she was so tired and miserable, she would actually call the police on herself just so that she could get a place to stay and a meal. And so now that's not even an option so a lot of advocates say like that was their way to have a touch point with those victims so that they could get resources. But now
and to get them away from pimps and
to get
people
them
who
away
are
from
trafficking.
them. So now pimps are taking advantage of the fact that minors can't be arrested. So once again, well-meaning and trying to look out for these young people who, of course, should not be penalized, especially criminally, but it's backfired.
At the same time, though, and this is, I think, what frustrates, people like Erica Evans, when I did the debate moderation, she's really focused on, we got to get to root causes. We got to get to, a diversion for people to like address their drug addictions, for example, when it comes to drug crimes, and, getting to root causes of why people are victimized in the sex trafficking industry. She doesn't prosecute pimps because that's a that's a King County charge. So that's a felony. So that would be a King County charge. But
people who buy, that's a misdemeanor.
Yeah, that she would charges gross misdemeanors and misdemeanors. So people who buy, she would charge the violations of the soap orders.
Yeah.
The thing that Claudia points out in her piece in the Seattle Times is that at the same time that the underage sex trafficking victims, that was decriminalized, there was supposed to be these receiving centers, these relief centers built. And there was one that actually got built on the east side of the mountains. It is since closed. And the money has been earmarked for years now for the west side, and it has still not materialized. So there's nowhere, they don't go to the Juvenile Justice Center because they don't get arrested anymore. There's also no relief center that's paired like it was supposed to be with that bill that's shown up. And so if we're going to do services to address this issue, you have to have the services show up.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to go back to something you said about, because that is something that our city attorney has said is important, is getting to the root causes. And I just wonder, what should the scope of the city attorney's role be? Because if the role is to enforce the law, to prosecute these particular cases, the extent of it would seem to me would be you choose what to prosecute, not to prosecute. But in terms of getting to the root causes, that seems like that would be an issue taken up by folks who are actually passing ordinances, like that might be city council or mayor. And I don't know. So I just, at the end of the day,
you feel like she's kind of outside of her scope.
I'm wondering, I have that question. So whenever I hear politicians, it's one thing if you're in that role where you are proposing policy, then that makes sense to me. But in this particular role, that feels more like, and especially if you're going to say something like that, then offer a solution that maybe you then pitch to the city council or to the mayor.
Yeah.
Especially since they seem to be in lockstep on a lot of progressive issues.
We are going to put a pin in this because we want to talk about it more as the week unfolds. And I would love if there are any neighbors along the Aurora corridor who have experiences with this. You live in the area, you have a business in the area. Give us a call or email us, soundside@kuow.org. The voicemail number is 206-221-3213. Again, voicemail 206-221-3213 or soundside@kuow.org. I just want to hear your experience. I want to know more. I want to hear the firsthand feeling of living along that corridor. I did, talk to some friends recently who say, yeah, we hear gunshots. But we also, frankly, they were a little more bothered by some of the TV cameras who were like on their street recently trying to get comment about this story. And they were kind of like, yeah, is it a little invasive to feel like you walk out your door and you're in the middle of sort of this media circus? So I want to hear more about how people are feeling about this. Leave us a voicemail or send us an email. And we're going to move on into our second story on Front Page.
I think the clear message from the data is we're at a critical point right now where we need to course correct.
So that was former Washington State Governor Christine Gregoire talking to Chris Daniels on KUOW. Axios reported recently on a flurry of troubling economic forecasts for our region that suggest we may be vulnerable to something called a white-collar slowdown. That's largely because of a mix of stuff that's been happening lately in our region: tech layoffs, rising inflation, our wages aren't keeping up, construction is slowing because of these high interest rates and also inflation and tariffs. Christine Claridge at Axios rounded up some of the data, and this caught your attention, Angela. I'd love to hear, more. Things are not looking super great. I have some of the numbers in front of me, but, just first, your big picture feelings about what stuck out to you about the data.
The fact that we are experiencing the economy a bit differently, that we're if the U.S. has a cold, we're on the verge of a flu, so to speak.
Unemployment is higher here, 5.5% as of April compared to 4.4% a year earlier, for example.
Absolutely.
And the national rate of 4.3%.
Right. And we had been the nation's darling for so long.
Yeah.
I mean, this was the place to come and you get a great paying job. Things are growing. We were booming. And now all of a sudden we're appearing to go backwards because of the investment in AI infrastructure and having AI be able to do some of these entry-level jobs. We're now seeing hiring slow down. And so that makes me a little bit, obviously, when you compare it to, let's say, pandemic levels, I don't know that we're there, especially when it comes, because one thing I'm also observing is how this is impacting all the people who are graduating from college.
Yeah.
I was talking to a woman yesterday whose son has a degree from a prestigious college and is looking for work and has a great degree. And their unemployment rate, I want to say it's at, it's higher. It's like 5.6%. Not as bad as
new college
for
grads.
New college graduates.
Mm-hmm.
So not as bad as the Great Recession in 2008, where it was like 16%. So not as bad, but still not a great picture. But
and that whole ladder to get into your first job, that is one of the things that AI, they say, is going to disrupt the most.
Yes. And the things they pointed out in this particular article, it was Boeing, layoffs that happened at Boeing. It was the tech piece, but also construction. It's already expensive to build here. And so being impacted in that space, it costing more. I think I mentioned the tariffs, the tech. And then we have on a national level, the grocery prices, oil
fuel
prices.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever you talk, I don't know about you, but you talk to economists, it's always, if one person could predict a recession, we'd all be right. They can't. So they have their probabilities. So the probability right now, I think they're saying is 30%.
Yeah, that was a Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, Wall Street Journal
recently.
thing, something like that. But yeah, it's concerning for our area, especially because we haven't experienced this in a long time.
Yeah, because again, we were just at the vanguard of that wave of tech build out, and it was just booming, as our friends at the podcast at KUOW dubbed their show. Things were booming, and they're not anymore. And we are experiencing what it means to have a relatively concentrated economy in one sector, which is tech. Although, as you say, Boeing and construction is a deal. It really matters, too, that there's way less office demand. And so that is also affecting the construction world. And it's not like energy prices are getting better anytime soon. And so, even if things wrap up in Iran, they say it could take, months to years until things settle down in that sector. So nothing great on the horizon at this point. Just another shout out to Christine Claridge at Axios, again, for rounding up a lot of those figures in both the city's economic outlook and Washington State's most recent jobs report. Anything more before we move on?
I think the only thing I thought was interesting, because you talked about the commercial space, the office space that's really taken a hit. Some of it is, yes, remote work, but also companies moving to, let's say, the east side, moving outside of Seattle. But I thought it was interesting that residential hasn't taken that big of a hit. And once again, it makes me think about the people that have the resources and the money, like that's holding pretty solid. And who are the people that are going to be left behind in all this? That's the question I have as we look ahead.
Yeah. But those 1,400 Meta employees who recently found out they lost their jobs, they can look out their windows and gaze at Mark Zuckerberg's $300 million, 390-foot yachts that was moored in Lake Union, and they can feel better because Mark's got a great ride. Let's move on. And, we're running out of time, so I'm going to actually skip ahead to our last story here.
Darn, we were just getting started.
I know.
I feel like we're just getting warmed up.
We're just warmed up. I know. Angela Poe Russell, this is how it goes right on front page. But I really want to get to this, our final story for the day. And that is the massive applause that you are experiencing as the creator of Aviatrix, the sold-out musical, which is in its final week at Seattle Public Theater. I cannot believe you're actually sitting here with me because you've been going through, you've been so busy with everything. The musical is about Bessie Coleman, who's the first Black and Native American woman to obtain an international pilot's license. She did this in the 1920s. How are things going? I mean, we talked ahead of the show. It's selling out. People are showing up and enjoying themselves. How are you doing, and what are you learning?
I have to tell you that, yes, it's amazing that it was, I don't want to say 4 days after the show opened, the entire run sold out.
That's awesome.
Right. So we added one show, then that sold out. And then we added another show last week. And that show is now sold out.
I want to get tickets. And Angela's like, well, I'll get you on the waiting list. And I was like, oh, dang.
Yeah, but I have to tell you, the best part for me, like, all this stuff is great. I hope it goes far. But the most rewarding part is seeing young people at the end of the show and their faces are glowing and they're beaming. A 15-year-old boy in the audience, he was beaming and he was saying now he wants to write a play. And then there was an 11-year-old girl who was just really inspired. I have just seen so many kids. The fact that people can come to the show and you see grandma and mom and the grandchild all together, and to see the kids enjoying it, it's like, okay, I just won. Like, there's my Tony Award. There it is.
Talk to me about your cast, because you particularly, your lead, I mean, you've told me a little bit, but it seems like you just knocked it out of the park with your lead.
Yeah. And I don't know if you know the story about how it happened, but our lead, Haley Dorch, she toured in the Broadway musical Les Miserables. Mm-hmm. So she played Fantine. She toured the world, doing that show. And I happened to go to high school with her dad. And we had not stayed in touch. We were just Facebook friends. And I was like, should I ask? And I thought, why would she want to come to Seattle in our little 155-seat theater? But then, in the spirit of Bessie Coleman, which is like the worst thing that could happen, is that she says no. And so I asked and sent her the script and the music, and she said yes. And I asked her recently, I was like, what made you say yes to this? And I think when people have done bigger work, they also are looking for things that feel meaningful. Mm-hmm. And also, she said she'd never done new work before, and that was exciting. So I think it's really important that new work is created, supported, because there are more stories to tell. So let's do it.
Yeah. So again, that is at Seattle Public Theater. I'm assuming seattlepublictheater.org.
Yes, that's
for more information. But if the tickets are gone,
well,
at this point,
wait list is effective.
Oh, great.
It really
Okay.
is. We get about 20 people in every show on the wait list. So
Great.
You just show up 1 hour before.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
So wait list is effective. I'm going to be on a wait list too. So we're all in the same boat, listeners. Angela Poe Russell, that's Aviatrix. And gosh, this is so fun. As usual, so great to have you in for Front Page. Thank you, Angela.
Thank
and
you
congratulations on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. Don't forget you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org or on your favorite podcast app.